Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here. The Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 City Council meeting for the Belton City Council. At this time, Mayor Pro Tem David K. Lee is joining us remotely from South Carolina. So he's up on the screen. Tonight, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Daniel Booker, the pledge to the Texas flag by Police Chief Assistant City Manager Gene Ellis, and the invocation will be given by Councilmember Craig Pearson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Join me in prayer. Father God, we come to you in Jesus' name. It's our desire to be your instruments. It's our desire to represent the citizens of this great city in a way that brings you honor and glory and makes this a great place for them to live. Well, Father, as your spirit guides the deliberations tonight, may they be honorable, may they be considerate and civil, and may we come to the right conclusions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. At this time, we have called this meeting to order. We have a multitude of public comments tonight. We have three not related to any item on the agenda, and those will go first. We have several folks here who wish to speak to another agenda item. But first of all, we'd like to hear from Ms. Ray Schmuck. And as always, you've been here before. We do have a 3-minute limit.
I do.
And at 15 seconds too, Councilmember Pearson will wave at you if you're still going.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to you all because I really wasn't interested in coming to city council meetings until I moved to Texas. And this August, I'll be here 19 years. And so there's also something that I've always been very interested in from the time that I got here, and that is a place for seniors that had activities and this sort of stuff. And we've listened over the years to, different things like that, but they never seem to land in Belton. And so I've now reached the ripe old age of 82. I'm leaving Belton and moving to Georgetown. I put my name in to a place there 2 years ago, and it just became available. And it's a senior center, and I'm a firm believer that socialization has so much to do with how you age, that they just have a lot of activities. And, I've loved it at Legacy Landing. It's been wonderful, but there's no activities there that, and there's a lot of transition. And so anyhow, I'm leaving the 21st of this month. And so it's been great. And you've all been very gracious to me and always come and speak my mind. And so I just wanted to say that I'll miss you.
And we will miss you, Ray.
Thank you,
for all
Ray.
you've done for the city and the citizens.
We appreciate, as Craig said, we appreciate what you've done for the community and the church and all of us. We've always delighted in your comments and coming here. And I'm sorry there weren't quite enough senior activities for you. If there are any developers out there listening, that is something that we need, is another residential development for some of us who are getting a little bit past retirement age. So again, we'll miss you. Come back and visit us. All right, thanks. Mr. Woody Durbin, if you would state your name and address.
Woody Durbin, 308 East 20th Avenue, Belton, Texas, for 22 years now. Wanted to just say, put on my gym neighbors, thank you, thank you, thank you. 4 years ago, I came to you with a little idea, and that thing has blossomed. 2 times the Disc Golf Pro Tour in Belton, Texas. That puts us on the map, and there's a lot of views on disc golf at the Belton course. And that is all I'm going to say. We'll be here Monday through Sunday. Come out. There's tickets involved, but best disc golfers in the country are going to be here in the world. They actually have it coming into Finland. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Woody.
David, be safe up in their disc golf national headquarters area.
Thank you for your work on that, Woody, and it does bring a lot of folks to Belton. See there, Ray, you could have taken up disc golf. That would have taken some time.
Thank y'all, everybody.
Thank you. All right, Marcia Cross, if you would come and give your name and address for the record.
My name is Marcia Cross. I live at 5483 Denman's Loop in Belton. I am the person who has been putting on the parade preparation clinics for horse owners for the last almost 10 years, trying to get people ready for the parade. And last December and this December, I got horse riders together and we went around and delivered wreaths to the police and the fire stations and that in downtown. I have a new idea I'd like to present to you. This is going to be hopefully a permanent impact on the city. And we have an opportunity to get a beautiful, beautiful statue for the place. Can you see? Can you see? Are we interacting? Can you see these pictures? This is, So a beautiful statue of a life-size cowgirl. We were just talking as he did about, and you did about character. And the cowgirl, we would like this to represent our community and bring a lot of attention, a lot of buzz to the city, a lot of economic benefits and attention to our city. So we have work to do to raise money for her. The artist said that he'd gladly be from Colorado here at the opening and pay for the shipping of her here, but she's quite gorgeous. Her name is Pretty in Chinks. And I have for you some pictures of her in the foundry and a close-up of her face. She's quite gorgeous. So there's also a nickname that we're proposing to go for and give the city a new nickname, but it has to be kept hush-hush until we trademark and protect it yet. So we have some very exciting ideas that we'd like to present to you. Can I bring this to you?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the background work that you've done on this, and certainly something that we will look at and consider. At this time, item 3 on the agenda is to recognize the City of Belton's Finance Department for receiving the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, for the 30th consecutive year.
Greetings from the Government Finance Office.
Just 1 second. Mr. Happy Fingers over there. He wants to get it over with. I know. Mayor and Council, I'd like to share with you an announcement from Chris Morrill, who is the Executive Director of the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. Now you can hit it.
Greetings from the Government Finance Officers Association. I'm Chris Morrill, GFOA's Executive Director. It is my honor to recognize you for receiving the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. The purpose of this award program is to encourage and assist governments to prepare comprehensive and understandable budget documents that we believe will both improve transparency and trust in government. To earn the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, you met demanding program criteria. Such a record reflects the professionalism, commitment, and dedication of your organization's leaders and finance team. We hope that this award will serve as an example and encourage others to strive for the same high standards in their own budget documents. Therefore, it is my privilege, on behalf of the Government Finance Officers Association, to present to you this Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. Congratulations.
Well, so I just want to say, I enjoy coming up here to receive these things, but it's not just to get another award to hang on the wall. It gives me the chance to recognize the amazing staff that we all have here. One of those folks is standing here next to me tonight, Megan Odian. I know I got that wrong. Is one of your senior accountants. This budget that we were awarded is special because it's kind of the first one that we've had that's electronic and interactive. The young lady here is the one that's in charge of that entire thing. I said, hey, Megan, wouldn't it be cool to have a budget document that just flipped pages through? And she took that whole idea and just ran with it and created a document that's much better than anything I could have anticipated. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing us to kind of this moment to share. But this is number 30 for us.
What you've done, as Mike just said, the interactive, we are uptown technology wise, instead of a huge budget document. He did print a couple of the real things, but it's so much nicer to be able to scroll through and find what you want. So I really do appreciate y'all's work. So let's get a picture with all y'all together there. Megan, thank you for your work.
Okay.
How are you going to do it? It's heavy.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, it's, when you win it every year, it can get to be kind of expected. But folks, that level of detail for 30 consecutive years is a big deal, and we shouldn't take it for granted. It really takes a lot of work and clarity, and we really appreciate those folks.
And I will say is, having gone through that line by line, the new format is pretty nice. I mean, it makes it a lot easier to look through the budget that way. Very good.
Really appreciate your work, Megan. I know Mike is really proud of you and the entire department, all the work that went into that. And as Craig said, 30 years in a row, there's no pressure next year. So,
Yeah, there is.
items 4 through 6 are on the consent agenda, and they're considered to be routine by council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda prior to voting at the request of any council member, and it will then be considered separately. Item 4 would be to consider minutes of the February 22nd, 2022 council meeting. Item 5 would be to consider an ordinance declaring unopposed candidates elected to office and canceling the May 7th, 2022 general election. And that was Daniel Bucher, Stephanie O'Banion, and myself were the 3 candidates that filed that were unopposed. Item 6, to consider authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Target Solutions for the police department roof replacement through the interlocal purchasing system TIPS Purchasing Cooperative. Anyone wish to consider any of those separately? If not, I consider a motion.
I move we approve the 3 items on the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Item 7 is to hold a public hearing and consider the disposition of property described as Dawson Ranch Phase 3, Block 002, Lot 0002, a variable width drainage easement located north of Chisholm Trail Parkway between Twin Ridge Court and De Leon Circuit. And Mr. Listy will present that item before we open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Appreciate the chance to come to you tonight and present this item to you. This evening, the council will consider the disposition of a piece of city-owned property. I'll present an overview of the request prior to the public hearing. We have received a number of responses to this call for the public hearing, and hopefully my comments will help clarify some of the issues that are involved here and clarify the request both for the public and for the city council. So just a little summary information to start. Jim Hightower has requested the acquisition of Lot 2, Block 2, Dawson Ranch Phase 3. This piece of property is shown as a variable width drainage easement on the Dawson Ranch 3 subdivision plat. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. The lot was inadvertently conveyed to the city in 2014, according to Mr. Hightower. The plan that Mr. Hightower has presented to us is to combine the lot that is currently owned by the city with his lot, because based on the information he's provided to us, this single tract, those two parcels together, were originally planned for the HOA as a pool, a clubhouse, and open space to serve the neighborhood. But however, that transaction did not occur. So here's a picture of the parcels that are involved. And so this is important to kind of get a good feel for the area. Of course, you can see the subdivision plat, phase 3 of Dawson Ranch, the lots along De Leon Circle located to the east. The area that we're talking about tonight is this area here, particularly the area in yellow. The area in yellow is the city of Belton's ownership, according to property tax records. Mr. Hightower currently owns the tract in orange. This is a platted subdivision lot. It is available for construction of a home at this particular point in time. Again, the goal or the objective that's been presented to us by Mr. Hightower is to combine his currently owned platted lot with the tract in yellow and for a single home site, basically. The home, again, would still be built on the tract in orange because of the significant number of easements that encumber the city-owned parcel. So again, that's the site. Keep the site in mind as we talk about the details a little bit more. Again, Mr. Hightower proposes to combine the city's lot with his lot and to sell that as a single home site. But something for the council to keep in mind is there are a number of public facilities and easements that encumber the tract. And I'll just describe those for you briefly. There is a variable width drainage easement over the entire parcel that's reflected on the final plat. There are multiple public utility easements located within the parcel. There's a 20-foot public utility easement that straddles the west property line and the east property line of the adjoining tract to the west. There is a 10-inch sanitary sewer line located along that west property line of lot 2, and there are 4 sanitary sewer manholes located within that easement. And finally, there's a public access easement over the entire parcel that's generally available for installation, operation, maintenance, repair, use, and replacement of all public utilities, be they electric, water, sewer, gas, and telephone. So again, aerial photograph. This is included in the council's packet and was available in the packet that we provided. The city-owned tract, a little hard to see on this, is the area encumbered by the drainage easement here on the west, and then Mr. Hightower's property is located there to the east. In addition, one of the additional considerations for the council is a related ownership issue. As this area has developed, there are a number of trail segments. There's 8 of those altogether along the north side of Chisholm Trail Parkway that remain in the name of Regatta Ridge LLC. That's the development company owned by Mr. Hightower. And so that's a related issue that has been brought to our attention and is a possible consideration for this exchange. Again, the property we're talking about here, the area in blue, is the drainage easement, the area along the west side of the plat that is owned by the city, and then the Hightower property is here. One of the issues that we brought to the council in our discussions with them has to do with the procedure for disposition of public property. Again, keep in mind this property, however it got this way, is currently owned by the city. And so in looking at the local government code, there are certainly procedures for disposition of public property. The Texas Local Government Code gives us the original guidance for that, and then that's reiterated in Belton City Charter. Typically, land can only be sold or exchanged by a city after it's been offered for sale through a general bidding process and an advertisement in the paper. But there is an exception in the local government code, this B3 section that you can see here. And the provision there essentially says that land or property interest originally acquired for streets, rights of way, or easements that a political subdivision chooses to exchange for other public purposes. This is an exception that could be considered by the city council if you choose to convey this property that's been requested. So state law does appear to allow the city to exchange the easement parcel for land for other public purposes. Something that we want to emphasize to the council is that you'll certainly hear from the applicant's representative tonight and from property owners in the area. The exchange of this land is allowed by the city. And if the council considers this to be an appropriate exchange, there are a number of conditions that we would recommend be included as minimum conditions for the disposition of Lot 2, Block 2. Again, the principal objective that is identified on the plat has to do with all the easements that encumber the property. And so there would be no change in its existing condition. The drainage, utility, and access easements shall remain open and unobstructed at all times for servicing public infrastructure, improvements, and utilities, vital to any land conveyance. Construction of any permanent improvements would be prohibited on the property. Again, we're talking about the property that's requested for disposition, not the high tower tract that's adjacent on which he certainly can build a home. Construction of buildings, fences, gates, irrigation systems, and any other temporary improvements is prohibited. Property shall be kept in its natural state and shall be maintained by the owner in accordance with city standards. Land clearing and brush removal is allowed, and tree removal would be subject to the city's landscape ordinance. Whenever the city is considering disposition of property, we have to look at the value of those properties. So this little exhibit compares the 8 tracks along Chisholm Trail Parkway. Their acreage totals 3.752 acres. Their value on the tax records is $16,344, basically. The piece of property that's under request, the 1.76 acres, totals $500. Again, there's been no appraisal performed. That certainly is something that could be done, but these are existing values in the Bell County Tax Appraisal District records. So our recommendation to the council tonight would be to conduct the public hearing, consider the applicant's request and any surrounding owner input. The request that's before you tonight is allowed by state law and may have merit based on the discussions that we've had tonight, but only under the circumstance and with the assurance of the minimum conditions that have been outlined previously. If the council does feel inclined to approve the action, we'd recommend the council authorizing us to develop documents that will run with the land. Again, very, very important. This is not just conditions that would apply to this particular owner, but any successive owners that would end up with the house and this particular piece of property. So we would recommend, if you want us to proceed in this direction, we certainly can prepare a conveyance deed and conditions of that deed that will run with the land for final review and action at a future council meeting. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the request as prior to the time that you might conduct the public hearing.
Can you go back to the value
Sure.
screen?
Uh-huh.
So that, obviously you said it's not been appraised and all that, and it's based on a tax roll, but as it sets, that 1.76 acres cannot be built on
Correct.
now. I mean, the city would never allow that. And that's part of these conditions, that property could never be built on. I'm sure it's worth more than $500 regardless, but it's not buildable.
Correct. It's
It's
not
just-
buildable. I think the tax office is kind of recognizing the fact that it's encumbered substantially with easements and constraints, drainage, utility lines, and so forth. So recognizing that, it certainly has perhaps more value than the 500, but would be reappraised in conjunction with any development that might occur on the adjacent property with this as a combined parcel, 2 lots ultimately for future development. But again, no physical development, no fencing, no construction, no storage buildings, nothing could be placed on this property.
Just wanting to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Listy. At this time, we'll open the public hearing, and I have a particular order. Zachary Kruger. And again, sir, if you would state your name and your address and limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
So Zach Kruger, 1802 Greenhaven. And first I want to thank the city planning department. As always, they're very responsive and polite in giving out information. And so although I'm glad to see this proposed development for the area is a single use family home and not a pool as was proposed several years ago, I don't think the acquisition of the city's property is necessary for the development of Mr. Hightower's land. The area is a drainage area with sewer lines dissecting the property. I think the property should remain in the city's ownership to ensure area remains a properly functioning area for drainage of large amounts of water that flow through it. Land's not usable. So what's going to happen is Mr. Hightower is going to incorporate that land into one parcel, develop a single family home, then sell it. It's going to probably be over 2 acres to a homeowner. And then the city's going to go back and tell that homeowner that they can't use 1.7 acres. That was just, combined with this parcel to develop on. I know this is probably not on the minds right now, but I think it should be a consideration for this homeowner that's going to eventually purchase this 2+ acres that 1.7 was in the city's property as a drainage given and combined, probably going to inflate the value of the other property. And then, we're going to tell him that he can't use it again. I know the city would like to acquire the other parcels of land, but I think there's probably other ways to get those other parcels than just this trade. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. David Orsag.
David Orsag, 1800 Greenhaven Drive. City of Belton and Belton City Council and Planning Department, thank you for providing impacted homeowners the opportunity to voice their thoughts. I understand that the City of Belton is considering the transferring of drainage property that resides directly behind my property at 1800 Greenhaven Drive to Mr. Hightower. And I'm not sure why the City of Belton is considering this transfer, as the transfer of drainage easement would be an unusual event. As I understand it, the City of Belton would not typically relinquish an easement property that they currently own and maintain to another party. To that end, I question why the City of Belton has validated this request through consideration. I realize that due to the substantial restrictions on the property, that Mr. Hightower would be unable to develop the land. So I don't see the benefit to Mr. Hightower to possess the land. I also believe that the city would be transitioning this land to Mr. Hightower as the responsibility to mow and general upkeep would move to him as well. And then, as Zach mentioned, that would also convey to the next landowner. My concern with this is that cities normally take possession of drainage easement properties to maintain the land and to ensure that downstream occupants are not exposed to a greater risk of flood damage. And this land swap may expose landowners to a greater risk when Belton no longer owns the land. For these reasons, I object to the sale or transfer of the City of Belton's owned and maintained land. And I thank you, though, for your time and for this consideration and for allowing impacted homeowners to voice their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Linda Miller.
Linda Miller, I'm at 3305 De Leon Circle in Belton. Good evening, council members, planning department, and other hardworking city employees that are here. When we purchased our home approximately 1 year ago, we were told that the open space behind us was designated as an open space. And for this reason, we purchased the home. We do not even have a rear fence so that we can just enjoy the nature and basically the dry creek bed. I'm happy to hear that you guys are not approving for Mr. Hightower or anyone else to build onto the property, because when it rains, the property does look much like a river. The city of Belton at this time has been keeping the property up very well. Public Works comes out a couple times a year and occasionally for a tree branch or something that falls. Mr. Hightower's property is partially behind mine, and it has not been cut or maintained in the year that we've owned the property. So it's quite overgrown. And my concern with selling the property to someone else is that now they're going to have quite a bit of acreage that they're going to have to be responsible to keep weed abated, and they will have no use for it. And my concern is down the road, we're going to get some sheds built on it and other things, and it's just going to become a code enforcement nightmare for the city. So I'm pleased that you're not going to allow any kind of building on the property, and that I thank you for. And I don't see any reason why the city should sell the property to someone who doesn't even maintain the one he has. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Donna Lewin. Did I get that right?
It's Luna.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. It's spelled Leon. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Carpenter, board members, Mr. Listy, thank you all for all your hard work and what you do. My name is Donna Luna. I live at 3303 De Leon Circle. So I'm on the east side of this property in question, on the other side of the owner's property. I have seen it rain through there. We built that house in 2015, and I have seen it rain so hard that the water is literally from our fence to the fence across the way. We chose this lot because of it being a green space. I have had to go out there and where poison ivy is growing under my fence from Mr. Hightower's property. I've had to go and take care of the poison ivy. And I, like my neighbor, I feel like something it's going to be ignored as far as that goes. Also, if a home is built there, we've lost the privacy that we wanted, that we bought that property for. Now, I do have a question for you. Can Mr. Hightower, if he obtains this property, can he go in there and request a change in the utilities that are running across that and the easements?
Requests would always be considered, but I don't know what the purpose would be. I mean, the existing sewer and the existing services serve development as it exists right now. So I'm not quite sure if you, what you have in mind.
Would he not have a purpose in order to better sell that whole property as one lot and put storage buildings or garage or
No
whatever?
storage buildings on lot, not the tract in yellow. There are going to be no buildings on the tract in yellow.
So he could never request that.
Never. I mean, if the property is conveyed to him and a deed has conditions that we've talked about, there would be no buildings built on the tract in yellow. None.
And will the deed for sure have?
That's
those
what we're
restrictions?
recommending. If the council favorably considers the
Okay.
request, we would say that those conditions are a minimum, absolute minimum for any conveyance.
Okay, now I've never walked all the way back, but I think there is a drainage pond back there.
Yes.
And so, this would be an interference with our drainage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. All right, I have two more. I have Mr. Jim Hightower.
My name is Jim Hightower, 320 North 9th Temple. We developed Dawson Ranch subdivision. The company I have, Regatta Ridge LLC, developed it. These two lots were originally in the master plan design that was presented to the city. This was a large, we thought for the homeowners association would take this property and use it for their facilities. It was big enough for a pool and an arboretum, and that was the original design. Failing that, as a large estate type lot. And the only reason that the city of Belton currently owns this property is from a clerical error where some property was being transferred to the city, and this lot and block was inadvertently listed on the deed as opposed to the lots that I still have. And that was just a clerical mistake. So all we're asking the city to do is put it back where it used to be, which was under my ownership. When I owned it before, all the utilities were there, all of the restrictions, the prohibitions against buildings. I do think we ought to be able to fence the property, because if it's a single family, everybody's going to want a fence around their property. But all the maintenance, the no permanent buildings, all of that was the way it was before when I owned it, and that's the way it'll be after. So it's not our intent at all to change anything from what the original intent was for this property.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. And Kayla Lenderos.
Hi, thank you all for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kayla Lenderos. I'm with a law firm in Temple called West Webb, Alberton and Gentry at 10 North 2nd Street. Mr. Hightower came and visited with me several weeks ago on this matter, and I believe you all may have received a copy of a letter that I drafted in the last few weeks regarding the conveyance of the property. And my letter was really focused on the exception that Mr. Listy referenced in his presentation. So I won't cover all of that again, just to say that I do believe that this proposed conveyance or property swap would fall under that exception in 272.001 of the local government code, which is an exception to the city's general rule that you bid, you have to advertise and bid out property when you're conveying it. Definitely understand the concerns that have been raised tonight, and the the property is in its current state, and the desire for it to remain that way. And I would just point out that I think all of the interests of the parties involved are met with this conveyance. The property would remain in its current state with the restrictions that the city has proposed. The lot that Mr. Hightower currently owns, he could go and build a house on it tomorrow. So nothing changes there. He continues to have that ability to do so. And at the same time, the city acquires ownership of lots that it's interested in acquiring, and it's already using or should be used for a public purpose. And so I think that definitely, again, understanding and respecting the concerns that have been raised, feel like a transfer could be worked out that continues to respect those concerns, and get everybody back to the place that was originally intended. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I definitely appreciate the time. Also appreciate staff's time in working on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council?
The only thing I'd mention is living in this neighborhood, I definitely understand all of your concerns and comments, and they're much appreciated when you guys come and speak your piece, and props to city staff and planning department for putting that together and just be able to hear your thoughts and things like that on it. It's definitely, it helps everything we do up here and understand why we do it. And then my comment would be, this lot is already the largest lot in the neighborhood by and far. I mean, I've got the Belcad map up in front of me and nothing even comes close to it. I'm talking about the orange lot that he currently has. So I mean, I think as far as sellability, if that's even a word, and definitely the attractiveness of it as is, I think stands alone by itself. That's just what I wanted to throw in.
I've got a couple of questions. So where would the access?
I'm sorry, are we done with the public hearing?
Yes.
I don't think we closed the public hearing.
Yes. My mistake. Close the public hearing when I asked for council comments.
So where is the access to lot 1? Is there a street access to that, or is it?
There's an easement. There's an easement for a driveway across.
Westernmost part. Yeah. On the plat, there shows on the westernmost is 30-foot access easement by separate instrument that will essentially go across the trail.
Okay. All right, and I was gonna kind of ask how this all came to be, but they've kind of answered that. And there's probably still some debate on exactly how this happened, but I think when you look at the lots he still owns, and then you look at the lot he doesn't own, it kind of lends to the fact that might not have been the original intent. However that happened, it happened. And it is, on a deed, and it's there, but basically he has no use for the property that he still owns. He can't really use it. So that kind of goes to the why we would do this piece. It's, there's not really that much in it for the city, other than we're using his property at the current time. I mean, there's a sidewalk going, or a trail or a park kind of running through there. So, however you want to view that and debate that, I want to be a little cautious what I say there, because I guess it could get litigated at some point, but it's, this is not really useful to the city. And the lots we're using are, that he owns. So it's, in his words, it's kind of putting it back the way it was. But, and then screening, the other question I had was screening from other properties. So at least the lot, I would think, that's built on lot 1, block 2, if there was a house, which I think that's the intent, is to build like an estate kind of lot, a house on that estate lot. It'd just be a big lot with a lot of green space on the lot, with that second piece. But would there be a requirement to screen, to have fence to screen from that lot 1, 2, 3 down De Leon Circle? Or is there already a fence behind those properties?
There's already fences.
Mike,
Sir, please come to the mic.
I hate to keep making you get up, but it doesn't record.
I believe all of the lots on De Leon Circle have fences. The lots that are on the west side, all but one lot has a fence on the existing perimeter. And
So Sam, would that be a requirement to fence that if you're going to build a house there?
No, there's not a requirement to fence it.
you know,
Okay.
if anything that would be done on that lot would require a building permit. And it'd have to go through the city process like on any other lot.
Be discussed.
Right.
Okay. And right now, that's just an undeveloped lot.
It's
So
a
it's
platted
not-
lot. He could come in tomorrow and request a building permit on it. You know, and so as long as it met all the setback and other area requirements for the tract, lot one, block two could be issued a building permit and, you know, by the end of the week, basically.
And it could be fenced. We could not prohibit fencing lot one. We have no need to. It's part of
Correct.
the right of ownership if you choose to fence it.
Right.
So I can't see that well, and I'm sorry, I can't use same device for two things. So the one lot that does not have a fence on it, is that against lot one or lot two? Is it against the developable lot or the open lot? The question that
No, it's
was,
majority of Hightower's lot block 2. It's lot number 3 on De Leon Circle that doesn't have a backyard fence.
yeah, but what is it front? Does it front lot two or lot one?
Both. Majority of Hightower's block of lot 1,
Gotcha. Okay.
small portion of lot 2.
Mr. Orshak, you said you do not have a fence in your backyard. I know you're coming from the west side. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're not allowed.
Okay.
So Sam, when you mentioned the prohibition of structures and fences, that was for all of lot two, nothing on lot one. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we could not have a fence on lot two, block two, particularly on the west side that has the easements and the utility lines splitting that property line and manholes running up and down it. And so again, I think our recommendation would be no fencing at all. Leave it open, essentially like it is right now.
Well, I think,
So
go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. You first.
And I think it's a reasonable expectation of the folks that purchased their property. That was the city's property. It was prohibited from building on it. And they thought that could always be green space. Now we've said many times up here, if you don't own it, you don't control it. But I think this is one of those cases where the buyers had a reasonable expectation for lot two, not lot one, for lot two, that it was not ever going to be fenced or built on or anything else because it was the city right away, et cetera. Now, if we proceed with this agreement and it retains that characteristic, I don't know how the other property owners are harmed.
And that's almost exactly, Craig, what I was going to say. The question I was to Mr. Hightower, if you're prohibited from putting fences, which you requested at the end, if you're prohibited, is there a reason to go forward with this request if it cannot be fenced?
All of the lots that joined these two were developed while I owned lot two. So any property, the De Leon Circle lots, as well as the lots that were developed by Keela, I sold him that property.
Understood. The question is, if you were to acquire this property in swap for the other properties and you were not able to fence lot two at all, not fence it, would you still want it?
I don't want to fence lot two off from lot one. That wouldn't.
No, I'm not saying it
our
would, no.
intent.
No, you would want to fence lot one and two as a single lot. What we're saying is you could fence lot one, but you could not fence lot two. So if you could not fence lot two, would you still want to acquire the property?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sure, for what?
Now, most of lot two is already fenced.
Yeah, but you would have to leave the one open that's open.
Well, but the people that are down there, I believe, could build a fence if they wanted to.
Yeah, if they wanted to, they would not be prohibited from doing so, but you couldn't build a fence from your side and this is the concern. I think one of the citizens said is if someone were to acquire that, they would have some kind of understanding that they could fence their own property and we may have a little angry customer. In
I'm
Belton when they
not
found out.
really sure why the city is adamant that there be no fence.
I think we heard about the flooding, because flooding will take out fences.
And I think the expectation of other landowners when they purchase their land that's backed up there, it's their choice if they choose to put up a fence, unless it's like Mr. Orsak who can't.
Well,
I don't think, at this point, I'm not convinced it's fair to, if we convey the land to you, to allow you to fence in lot 2. Even as part
well,
of
like
lot
I
1.
say, the only way we could do that would be to take it to the city in the first place.
Right.
So y'all would have to agree to that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Help us understand why you want lot 2.
This whole area is in a low spot.
Yes, sir, it is.
So everybody on both sides of these lots are looking down into people, it's very unprivate. It's not it's not the most desirable spot for a single family house. That's why we originally intended to have the homeowners association there.
Okay.
It was very unfortunate that that deal fell apart. And it was at the time, there was some thoughts that was in the floodplain, both lots. Turned out to not be true, but that's what caused the deal to not go through. And that was well before any of this transfer took place. And as I say, but it was always used so that drainage easement property could be used as a buffer. So you could plant some shrubs and stuff to create a little privacy in this low lot. That was the original design concept from trying to utilize this property and make it economically viable.
So your desire is that if a landowner, the homeowner were to own the land, they could then create natural buffers with trees and shrubs that they would not normally be
Which
able
would
to
all
do.
be, which would be allowable within the drainage easement, not a
Understood.
couldn't build a building or something that impedes the water or anything like that. But I've got the idea from this from a piece of property in in League City, Texas, where there was a low spot. They had some public had an arboretum on the drainage easement, which flooded occasionally when there was a big rain, but it was beautiful flowering trees. And in the springtime, people got married down there. And that was what originally inspired me to break up the lots in this fashion. So, I would hope that it would be a very, very nice house with very, very nice garden and a very, very nice yard that, would be a benefit to the homeowners and to the community.
Thank you, sir. Sam, would you go back to the minimum conditions or recommendations, please? That's it. Thank you. So this would not prohibit Mr. Hightower from doing what he just described, except he couldn't build a structure, but there could be trees and bushes added.
Yes, he could clear, he could remove brush, he could install trees. We certainly want to work with him to ensure that the existing drainage flow is maintained. We'd want to monitor the existing easements that exist and ensure that there's not, particularly along that west line where there's the sewer line, to ensure there's no encroachment into those existing services. So it will take some monitoring with the permanent improvements, home, garage, storage buildings, whatever, built on his existing lot. And again, this is in more of a natural state.
Thank you.
Well, that being said, I'll just presumptive jump in. I understand the citizens' concerns. It echoes my personal concerns. But in looking at all of this and seeing what the minimum requirements would be, is the land would continue to be used in its current state with somebody who would really kind of own the management of that land if we were to convey it. And then at the same time, getting the other property that's more public into the city. So with that, I would make a motion that we allow for this swap of property with the minimum requirements on the deed restrictions on those easements and the drainage easements and all of that stuff, prohibiting the building of fences on lot 2. Again, swapping that lot 2 for the other property. I'd make that motion.
Second.
It seems to me that this preserves what the folks that live there desire. And our code enforcement folks are very, very good. And you are their eyes. If there's issues that come up that are against that, then it takes one phone call and they're there. And so and this puts these property back on the tax roll, which is very appropriate for all of us. And it gets the property back that the city should own and maintain along the pathway, Chisholm Trail. Any other comments before we vote?
One last comment, because I think a lot of folks, I'm hearing at least, love the idea of the wide open spaces right there, and may have been led to believe that was always going to be wide open spaces. But as Mr. Listy said a while ago, Mr. Hightower has the right now to build on lot 1, block 2, which takes away that wide open space that people would really prefer to maintain. And I think, as Mr. Pearson said, if we put the serious restrictions in perpetuity on lot 2, block 2, that does address at least part of the homeowner's concerns. That's not going to go away. But regardless of what we do here tonight, lot 1, block 2 is still available to be built on in the relatively short-term future. And that does take away that wide open space that everyone I hear really would prefer to maintain. That's not within our purview tonight to decide whether or not lot 1, block 2 can be built upon, because it can be. So I think Craig's point is, if we make the restrictions such that lot 2, block 2 remains in the current state, with the exception of some landscape planning, some improvements and that thing, and the deed clearly states that no building can ever be built upon that area, that addresses the majority of the concerns from the homeowners.
I do want to make a comment to what Craig said earlier about the expectation of the green space and Mr. Hightower's rebuttal that everything was developed before then. Looking at Belkhead, that lot was deeded to the city in 2012. Looking at the lots on De Leon, the earliest one is 2015 was the first homeowner. So those lots were not developed. They were developed as far as a street and a curb and gutter and utilities, but they were not conveyed to the original homeowner by then. And so I think your comments have merit to that point. If I scroll over to a lot on Red Rock, this one is dead in the middle of it, 1803 Greenhaven. That one was not deeded to the original homeowner until January 24th, 2014. So I think to those comments, correct, that every single lot abutting this easement was not conveyed to an original homeowner. It was conveyed from the development to a builder, but not to an original homeowner. And then my second comment, following up on earlier, would be this lot is 3 times the size of those first 3 De Leon lots. And, you know, when you talk about $1 million home and $300,000 subdivision, this would be kind of one of those instances. This lot as is, I think is attractable. And I don't think conveying it back to, or keeping it in our control and ownership hinders that fact.
I think a question that some of you had is, how does that work? If there's deed restrictions on the property, how does the future buyer know that? And I think we've got an expert, Mr. Pearson. Would you explain how that works in the closing?
Excuse me.
Please.
Excuse me, we have a motion and a second. I'd like to call the question. I think
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor of disposition of the property as described with the restrictions as stated, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-1. Item 8, consider authorizing a license agreement with the Arusha Coffee Company to allow for a storage container to be placed in the city parking lot. And we do appreciate the comments.
Thanks
We
for
do
coming.
appreciate your coming. Item 8, as I said, consider authorizing a license agreement with the Arusha Coffee Company to allow for a storage container to be placed in the city parking lot located on North First Street between Penelope and East Street. And Tina Moore will present that item.
Good evening, everyone. All right. Before I get started, I do want to point out that a representative for Arusha, Jacques Ernest, is here, and he will be able to address the council if there are any questions at the end of the presentation. Arusha's Coffee Company approached the city a while ago about placing a storage container in the city parking lot located on North First Street, which is between North Penelope and Northeast Street. And I will show you a map in just a second. The proposed storage container measures 8 feet wide, 20 feet in depth, and 8.5 feet in height. So here is the site plan. Here is Northeast Street, here is North Penelope and East First Street. And here is that proposed, that is the existing city parking lot. Here is the proposed location for that storage pod. Again, the measurement for that is 8 feet wide by 20. For the setbacks, the requirement is the pod has to be 3 feet away from the side and rear property line, and also has to maintain 10 feet distance from the existing buildings on site. Here is a look at what is proposed, the storage containers with the existing measurements. What city is recommending is a temporary license agreement to allow for this existing, the storage pod to go there for a reevaluation within 3 years to see if it's an acceptable use, an appropriate use at that location. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Mayor, I want to make a comment. Mayor Pro Tem Lee sent me a message that he had to leave the meeting. So he left at 6:32 p.m.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Questions or comments for Tina?
What are the rules about that? I mean, is it not allowed and that's why we're here tonight, or what does the code say about that?
Well, this is city-owned property, not private property. So that is one of the reasons why it is brought to you tonight. Again, to just see what your guys' input is, there are some restrictions on it. There is a license agreement. So therefore, the applicant has to provide some kind of insurance to state that if there is any accident, that they're able to handle the cost for that. The rules are pretty much it's in the city parking lot. So it needs permission before it can be granted.
And so basically it's not against our codes. It's just you're asking our permission to put it there as city.
So question, if the parking lot were owned by Arusha's, would the container be allowed?
It would be with the setback requirements.
In that location, is it going to affect that much parking? I mean, it looks like that's a pretty good spot for it, but is it going to make a big impact on the use of that parking lot?
Well, there are currently, sorry. There are currently 9 parking spaces over there. 3 parallel parking spaces and 6 diagonal spaces. So the pod will take up one of the parallel parking spaces at that location.
Will the second space keep from opening the doors? So if the doors swing open on the pod, does that take out the part of the second parallel space?
I want to say they're garage type doors, but I apologize. I don't know that. I'm gonna have to ask.
Well, you can get them with garage top doors, or you can get them
Okay.
with swing open doors, either one.
Come up to the mic, please.
But it
Putting
could
you on
get
the spot.
blocked. It could get blocked by a car is the point too.
My name is Aaron Jacques. For that one, I can't double check on it because I'm pretty much sure there's pretty different options we can come up with. Those kind of containers, there's a lot of way we can, we do the doors and the opening and up and sideways and, modify them in a way that can work with the, city with the cars and everything. Like I said, we've been insured and we already put the certificate insurance, just anything happens, so we'd be responsible to take care of anything. But as far as like opening the doors and everything. And also we've been here for the past 10 years. This parking lot haven't been used as much as now started being using since like there's all the business start opening in Belton. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to put it there, because not everybody think this is a city or parking lot, pretty much. Most people think this is a privately owned parking lot. That's why it hasn't been used over the years. And so since we kind of like wanted to see, the idea is we're gonna have a roasting roasting machine that we're gonna showcase, and the city that permitted us to have open doors on the side of the building. And in that case, we're not gonna have enough room to put the coffee bags and everything. And we were thinking how we're gonna store our coffees, and that's when we kind of like, okay, that could be a better idea for us to benefit us in a way in the future. Especially right now, coffee prices are going like extremely expensive. And if we could store some of the coffee, lower the costs. And because right now, as everything inflation, we haven't even put like add in the prices yet. We want to keep it the same, of course, for the UMHB college, because we focus a lot on the UMHB college students, and we don't want to apply up the prices too much. So that way we want to keep it the same theme, like, low price coffee and lower price food. And they've been coming to Arusha since day one. And of course, we have the neighbors also coming to Arusha, enjoy the coffee and everything. So that's why we want to kind of see if it could be granted to have that one parking space to put our storage there. And like I said, Ms. Tina had put out 3 years temporarily, can be revised, and down the road, anything can happen. Maybe you can reconsider something. If anything had changed as far as like parking space, you can always considering to come up with something else. But if anything else, I think that'll be very good for us in the city, pretty much, in a way, as the attraction coming to Arusha, everybody. I think
So you're
we are-
saying it would be possible to check and see whether sliding doors would be available?
Yes. Pretty much sure. We very open-minded to work with anything. Very easy to work with. We're not gonna just like, oh, this is what we want, but
It's less secure. It's less secure, but you can put a garage door on the side of that building. You can put it on the end of the building.
Yeah.
The
And
garage,
also we can put it in the very back, because as you can see here.
there's a space.
If we're gonna be instead of from the front, we can put the door from the back. So that way, there's not gonna be any cars or anything. We're just gonna leave any space, because we have to be 3 or 5 foot away from this fence.
3.
3 foot from the fence. So I think I can measure the doors when this opens, and pretty much if it's gonna be enough space for me to get in and get out.
Not a deal breaker, just a concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to dictate what kind of doors or where, but just be sensitive to the situation there. And by the way, you talk about inflation, those little buildings are not getting any cheaper either.
There's not.
They've probably doubled or tripled in price in the
Yes.
last year or two.
So I don't necessarily have an objection, but I do know we have some new development happening at the depot station. that would look directly down this. So I don't, again, I don't know what the back of the buildings looks like. I've been in the front, I've been inside, but I obviously admittedly haven't been to the back of the building, so I don't know. I don't want anything to detract from if it is a contiguous look, or if there's historical look, or if it's all run down. Maybe we need to figure out something about our parking lot, but if it can be similarly colored or
With some discussion
look
about painting,
attractive.
painting was a possibility. And I think y'all discussed
That was one of my
That's what I was-
suggestions, is that this would be a great opportunity for some of those college students to do some creative artwork to make that look more attractive
Mural-
instead of
mural
just
or
a typical
solid color.
Yeah, like I said,
storage building.
we're very open-minded. I mean, like I talked to Miss Tina, and when I first sent the picture to her, and I mean, when it comes to color, I mean, there's not gonna be a problem. We can even paint it, and we're very, very open-minded.
My last comment would be to the length of the term. I have no problem with the 3-year term. This is a very unique license agreement. I know we have other license agreements, but so I don't know about shortening the first term and maybe coming back with the longer second term, because this is I would say a pretty unique license agreement. I mean, you can count probably 15 other businesses there. If they all approach us with the same thing, now we're like stuck for 3 years. What do we do? Kind of, if everybody wants a container in the parking lot, I don't, just
The
concerned.
agreement has up to 3 years, but it can be canceled at 30 days notice. We wanted to be flexible and allow an opportunity, but
Gotcha.
parking is obviously a real challenge in the area. This is a city parking lot. And so we wanted to be a little bit careful about obviously what's going on, as you mentioned, the depot and everything going on in the area, the library, demands for.
So
for
if we
parking
ran
areas.
into issues and something that was drastic, it could be a 30-day notice from either side.
The only thing I would say to the council is this: we have a lot of parking lots in town. If this happens, you're probably going to get other requests. You're going to have to be able to differentiate between this request and other requests at other parking lots. I'm not saying you cannot do that. I think you can do that. But this one is well off a street. It's got some significant differences in what other requests may come forward, but you're going to have to be able to say there's a reason why this one, which is in the very back corner, a couple 100 feet off the street, was approved and some other requests might not be.
Right.
Because I think you're going to get more of these requests.
It's not very visible, to your point. It's kind of tucked back.
Right.
Right. I think you've got plenty of discretion to do this and to turn down others, but just remember going forward. In my mind, this one is different. Some of the other ones may be as well. I don't know, but this one is well off a street.
Precedent, important point that John's making.
That followed the point I was probably trying to get at.
Did you have another question?
Nope.
Any other questions from council?
What term are we voting on?
3 year.
3 years.
Okay.
Up to
With
3
respect to-
years. There's a 30-day out if needed, but it also says for a period of up to 3 years.
And I
So-
recognize this is not an insignificant investment, so I think we need to stay with that. And I agree with John. This one is sort of uniquely suited, both in proximity to the business and being off the street. And so are we ready for a
And
motion?
That was one of the reasons we kind of think that was gonna be a good idea. It's not gonna be off the street or where somebody can see it and everything. And from the original idea, the place, I mean, where we wanted to put it, it was gonna be on that back corner right here.
Right.
But because of the fire marshal, was gonna be too close to the building, and it was gonna be, it was gonna be off the street. It will be like very somebody to.
I think you've accommodated, I think we've got a reasonable accommodation so that it's a win-win.
Yes, absolutely.
So I would move we approve this item as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And we appreciate what you've done with that building.
Thank you.
And the
I'm glad to
business you've
see
brought to
you need
downtown.
Thank
Yeah.
you, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Item 9 is to receive a presentation on the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ended September 30th of 2021. Mr. Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Was it you? I'd like to present to you tonight the fiscal year 21 annual comprehensive financial report. So if you'll allow me a few minutes, I'll give you some highlights for the year. First of all, our auditor, James Reitmeyer, Boyd and Thorell gave us a clean audit. You'll hear more about that from Christy Davis here after I'm done. What a clean audit means is that our financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city as of September 30 of 2021. So let's look at the city as a whole, all funds, full accrual, one big entity. Our fund balance increased by $4.7 million over the previous year. The big driver of that is contributions from third parties, like developer contributions for infrastructure. You'll hear me say that a lot as we go through here. And we ended the year with $94,438 of net position, if you will, a fund balance. One thing I'll bring to your attention a little bit is this prior period adjustment that you see there, 1.2 million. That's asset related things that we kind of did on the EDC side, and I'll get to more of that when we get to that. So $94,438,000 of fund balance is divided into those three categories you see there. 72 million of that is capital assets, stuff that we can't use to buy things with. That's stuff in the ground. $5 million of that is restricted for certain purposes. So there's kind of some legal restrictions to that. And that leaves $16,783,000 of unrestricted net position for the city as a whole. When I go into certain funds now, you'll recall at the end of fiscal year 21, we transferred $1,889,000 of reserves out of the general fund into capital project funds for some significant capital projects. The largest of those, 1.3 million of that, was for 13th and College reconstruction. Another 300,000, 325, I believe, for the police department roof, et cetera. Well, because we did that large transfer at the end of the year, we had a net loss in the general fund of $1,679,000. In other words, we draw down our fund balance as we expected. We ended the year at 29.3% of budgeted expenditures. That's a bit below the 30% that we want to maintain. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we go forward into fiscal 22 and beyond. Debt service wise, we spent $1.1 million in principal and interest on our debt, and we ended that fund with about $74,000 of fund balance. We have two governmental funds related to the tax increment reinvestment zone. As the values within the zone continue to increase, that generated net income for the TERS fund of $367,000. There's also a TERS capital project fund. And then in that fund, contributions exceeded expenditures by $916,000 to make that fund balance just over 3 million for future capital projects in the zone. Our hotel motel fund made $113,000 in fiscal year 21 from hotel occupancy taxes. We also have 3 equipment replacement funds that are governmental funds. We report these together in the annual report. And that fund balance grew by $27,000 to $795,494 at the end of the year. Water and sewer is reported combined. All water and sewer related funds are reported as one fund in the annual report. And all of those combined reported net income of $2.4 million. I think around 3.9 of that 2.4 was infrastructure contributions, developer contributions of infrastructure and things. On the operating side alone, operating revenues grew by $394,000 to $9.3 million, but our operating expenses in 21 went up substantially by $2.2 million because of major maintenance projects. You'll recall that we relocated the water line along the loop, and all of that's called maintenance, as well as depreciation and higher costs of water production, et cetera. So even though we had this large increase in reserves in total, the unrestricted fund balance in the combined water and sewer fund actually declined by $781,000 to $8,937,024. Now that 8.9 million is made up of these funds that you see listed there. The actual water sewer operating fund is 6,157,000 of reserves. The capital project fund is 2.9 million. We have $900,000 in our water meter replacement fund and 217,000 in the equipment replacement funds. Those two bond obligations that you see there with negative unrestricted fund balance is simply kind of an accounting torque, if you will, where the assets, the unspent cash in those bond funds gets reported as invested in net assets. And so that just leaves the liabilities in those funds that become negative. Nothing to be too scared of there. The drainage fund trudged along as it usually does. Operating revenues were 544 with expenses of 605. Again, we had 277,000 of capital contributions there that raised that net income. In fiscal 21, we created two internal service funds. The information technology fund ended the year with 61,000 in net income. So it now has reserves of 140,891. The important thing to know there, though, is all of that, in fact, more of that than 140, I think it's 158,000 of that is capital assets. So that means if you have more capital assets than you have total reserves, that means your unrestricted reserves are negative 17,877. That's due to the pension and other liabilities that we record at the end of the year. Not terribly frightening there. We just probably need to increase our contribution a little bit to account for those kind of things as we go along. The building maintenance fund is the other there, 23,000 of reserves in that fund. It's September 30. The last thing that I want to talk about is your Belton Economic Development Corporation. BDC recorded net income of $1,053,000 for the year. But we recorded a prior period adjustment of $1,909,000 in that fund. This is really related to kind of a capital asset cleanup. What I mean by that are the assets that EDC contributes or that it constructs. When it constructs water infrastructure, streets, et cetera, those assets actually belong to the city. They get donated to the city by the EDC. They don't belong on the books of the corporation because it's a city asset to maintain from that point forward. So we had to clean that up a bit. That, if you'll recall, that $1.2 million prior period adjustment that you saw on the government as a whole side type of thing, that's the city's side of that $1.9 million PPA. The other part of that prior period adjustment was related to getting off the books some assets that had been disposed of previously in previous years. So it's really just a cleanup that we had to do to get to record capital assets correctly. They ended the year with $1,809,000 of fund balance invested in capital assets. An unrestricted net position is $10,952,000. So that's all of me. If you have any numbers questions, you can ask me now or wait. I'd like to introduce Christy Davis with JRBT, who can kind of talk about the audit for you, with you. Get you going there.
Sure. I may just use this button here. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to join you tonight. And I also want to go ahead and take a few minutes to thank Sam, Mike. I know Megan was here earlier and their team. So the success of this audit is, attributable to their success. And we spend about 4 weeks with them going through this audit. So it's no small feat. And, the work that they do to help us with this audit, the preparedness, the timeliness, they got the award earlier for the budget. So, they demonstrate that same quality and effort during the audit. So we definitely appreciate it. I want to take just a few minutes. I know Mike already went kind of over the numbers with you. This is just more bigger picture from the audit of our results. So again, when we come in and do this audit, these financial statements are the responsibility of management with council's oversight. We're to come in and conduct an audit to make sure that those financial statements are properly presented for the users of those financial statements, and then to be able to provide an opinion on all of the information within those financial statements. So part of that, of our procedures, is to determine are they free from material misstatement? And so we do a number of things as we have listed here. We obtain and examine evidence on a test basis for all the amounts and disclosures that are in those financial statements. We look to see that management has selected and properly utilizing accounting principles that should be followed and estimates that are made. And then we step back and make sure, does this financial statement properly present the city as a whole, as well as its individual components. The significant accounting estimates that are included in the financial statements are pretty consistent from year to year. These include looking at accounts receivable and making sure the city is going to be able to collect those, and if not, that a proper allowance has been established for those. The capital assets, as Mike was indicating, have significantly grown over the years, and want to make sure that those are being stated properly and their usefulness is being considered in the depreciation of those over time. And then lastly, the pension and OPEB liabilities and related outflows and inflows. A lot of that information comes from third-party actuaries and other entities. And so there's a lot of assumptions in those for the individuals that participate in those plans. And as a result of our review of those accounting estimates and our audit procedures, we did not have any material adjustments that were made into these financial statements. Information might look slightly different from what gets presented during the year, but that's just because there's certain rules and regulations that require the information in our audited financial statements to be presented as it is. And so you'll find in those financial statements our opinion, as it's stated here, that they do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city and its changes in the financial position and cash flows for the year that ended. So at the end of the day, that's the opinion that you want, and we call that a clean or unmodified opinion. So that's good news to deliver each year. We also have some other things that we need to do when we do the audit of the city. So there's various laws and regulations that the city must adhere to. From a state side, there's Public Funds Investment Act, and then also state competitive bidding requirements. And so we're required to conduct procedures to make sure the city is in compliance with both of those. And I'm pleased to report we had no instances of non-compliance related to either of those items. And then also based on the amount of federal awards that the city expended for this past year, they're also required to undergo a single audit, which is in accordance with uniform guidance. The program that was selected for testing was highway planning and construction. That's based on the amount of expenditures within that particular program. And again, we have a clean or unmodified opinion that the city complied in all material respects with those requirements under that major federal program. So again, good news for the city, and also the grantors like to hear that as well. And then lastly, as part of the audit, we do review internal controls, both over the financial statements as well as compliance with those federal and state laws and regulations. And again, good news, we did not have any weaknesses or deficiencies that we identified in internal control. So I know each year situations can change, and I know the finance department has been working on some changes and reassignments. And so we spent quite a bit of time to make sure those things, that divisions or changes in duties do not lose sight of any controls, that need to be in place. So those were good modifications that were made and keep things moving as they should be. And that's all I have.
Any questions for us?
Thank you very much. It's really nice to get that good report once again. And obviously, we're proud of the finance staff and the work that they've done. We appreciate you validating that. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Item 10, to receive a presentation, consider a resolution adopting the City of Belton Parks and Recreation Strategic Master Plan update for 2022 through 2026. Mr. Bates.
And everyone's,
What hat are you wearing?
yeah, this is Parks and Rec. And everyone's wondering how long is Matt going to take here? But no, appreciate you guys. This was something that came about in May of last year. You know, I kind of had the one thing going over there at Parks and Rec, and obviously through that time, now we've kind of come to a completion where we're ready to present this to you all, and hopefully y'all bless that and kind of go from there. Real quick as to why we're doing it. We have a plan in place already that was done in 2016, 2016 to 2026, a 10-year plan that's on the books with Texas Parks and Wildlife. There is no mandated need for us to do this 5 years, but it is what we believe, to steal a Councilmember Lee term, but a prudent step for us to be able to make sure that we're kind of still hearing what the community wants, because we have checked a lot of the lists off, and I'll kind of explain that to you all real quick. To summarize the 70-page strategic plan into one image, this was really the priorities list that came out in 2016. These were the things that they kind of initiated and said, hey, this is important for the city, and this is what we should really work to. Each of the items, certainly the high priority items, had an explanation or a kind of a narrative as to what we're looking for within that. I'm going to quickly bounce through them, but we've had substantial, in at least 11 of the 16, we've had substantial improvements in. The shared use path well over doubled its size since 2016. Improvements at all our soccer fields, a permanent dog park that was that we didn't have before. Natural areas and open space, there was a huge desire to have more of that. And we purchased Heritage Park in that time, in 2018, one of the best things that we've certainly enjoyed for sure. We've also developed two parks, Jeff Hamilton Park and Nolan Creek Nature Trail, since 2016. We also took on Miller Springs Nature Center. And then obviously when we talk about water recreation, we've improved some areas like the fishing dock that you see down there at Heritage. Finally, some high level things, but you've seen the basketball courts at Edgewood Park. It was called out as a priority. The investment in that's been positive. We didn't have a community garden in 2016. We do now. We didn't have any pickleball courts. We do now. And so that's at Chisholm right there for it. And then also disc golf, as you heard Woody, as he comes annually to tell us about it. That's going on there. So first thing we did in the plan, you guys all have the actual plan in place in your packet. This is just kind of an overview for PowerPoint for our guests here. But we changed obviously the acknowledgements, updated our boards, and a couple of folks got some promotions, and we're able to kind of get some things going there. We also updated our demographic information, just making sure that we are keeping that current so that we know who the population is that we serve. I'll kind of run through that. This is one of the things that we have in our existing plan in 2016. It's a Parks Amenity and Matrix. This is a real useful tool, and encourage, if you guys ever want that, we can certainly make that available to you. But this shows you every piece of parkland and amenity that we have in Belton that we either maintain or have a role to play in with. So we've updated all of that. Obviously, the number of benches that we had since 2016 has increased. Number of courts, left, right, community gardens, that kind of stuff. We focused on three main areas for input. We did the City of Belton strategic plan. That's the city plan that you guys work on. So things that you see there. We obviously had Parks Board, we had city staff, and we did a real big push for a community survey. So we almost had 500 responses. We didn't hit the 500 goal. That was what we were hoping for, but still a 20% increase from the 2016 survey. So a lot of people taking it. A very short, brief survey. You remember, it ran from Memorial Day really through August is when that survey ran through. High points are, as always, walking, hiking trails are the number one amenity that you see, that why people visit parks. A lot of the stuff you see is quite passive recreation, exercise, play spaces, etc. Heritage Park, no probably youth sports a driver there as to why people go there, for kids, grandkids, all that kind of stuff. Amenities that are important. Again, walking, hiking trails in any community is going to be your number one. It's just It's proven as age old as time that it really is what people like to do. But also you see splash pads making an appearance there and playgrounds. How do we hear about, this is one of the things I would tell you from 2016. The number one response we have in 2016 on how people hear about our programs was the city website. And so we've come a long way with social media, certainly our own city social media, kudos Paul, but also, kind of how people interact and hear about things is overwhelmingly. Our city events, we kind of want to make sure what was tracking, Christmas on Chisholm Trails, that kind of stuff was, of course, going to be some of your bigger events that people have been a part of. Questions 6 and 7 of the survey, you may remember it well from last year, but the 6 and 7 were write-in answers. We try to group everything together. Really, the majority of the responses were people want to see more trails, more playgrounds, more amenities in our parks, and kind of go from there. And then activities in terms of programs in the future, big emphasis on community events. So more Christmas on Chisholm Trails, more B4s that Judy does, and things like that. I think people have a real desire for. I don't know, I'm moving fast there, so
But notice that skating is down at the very bottom.
Yep.
There for a while, there was a big movement, and that seems to kind of
Yeah,
faded
and
away.
I think there's one of the things I could certainly impart my own opinion on that. I think often your demographic that you're going for with a skate community doesn't necessarily attend.
Follow our webpage.
They don't follow our webpage. That might be the best way of saying that.
Okay.
So I think it's important nevertheless to understand that it's an amenity that we don't have. And so still a need there to address some of that. We'll move quickly on to what we did as a Parks Board and staff. We essentially established 5 key priorities. You may remember that list at the beginning. This was essentially to build off that and say what is important to the city. We have walking, hiking trails, youth sports, athletic fields, expanding services in parkland, preservation and development of existing infrastructure, and water recreation. I'll touch on each one of those briefly. Walking, hiking trails, continuing to expand. It's the number one thing people are asking for, that people want to see in our parks. We're doing it. We are about to dedicate our shared use path that connects into our south of the community, underneath the interstate there. But there's so many more opportunities that are coming along with Heritage Park, with 13th Avenue, with some areas that will really improve connectivity and those amenities for folks. We did engage our youth sports. These are key, I would call them really key stakeholders in the Parks Department. So we wanted to make sure that they felt that they were included in all of this. Included in that is really some things that they are focused on. I think lights at the soccer fields will be an issue that you'll hear come up. We want to explore that with them in a partnership. Baseball, there is some growth and improvements needed at those facilities. And then softball, again, some retrofitting of LED lighting and just really kind of just general upgrades to the facility with that. Expanding services in parkland, a lot of these were included in our strategic plan as a city, but looking at a park maybe in the southwest of our community in the future. Expanding our current parks with the Standpipe Park coming online very soon. Obviously, the expansion of Heritage Park. Leveraging partnerships for success. We talked about that a lot, making sure that we as a department are continuing to engage folks in the community to better improve what we do and offer more. And then something that kind of some things that spawn from Parks Board, just real utilization of Chisholm Trail Park. We have a lot of open space there and some ways that we can continue to make sure that there's amenities being used year round there. Infrastructure, and this is really just generally as it says, this is make sure that we don't forget about what we already have, making sure that when we're going through the budget process, when we're talking to you as a council, that we understand that there are some things that are aging in our community and things that we'd like to get done. A big one, right, would be resurfacing some of the trails that you guys have probably been on. Chisholm Trail Park, it's aging, and so some things like that we can kind of come through the appropriate measures with Sam and Mike and those guys are just kind of making sure that maybe we can address some of those needs between now and 2026. And then water recreation, this was an area of just ensuring that we continue. Our splash pads are so popular, make sure that the commitment's still there to making sure that those run well. There has always been talk about a community pool. And so I think probably doing some due diligence about doing a feasibility study, which was called out in 2016 as a lower priority as an implementation, but something that we should work towards. And maybe as we get closer to the end of the lifespan of this plan, we start to really think about whether a community plan would work for Belton and that kind of thing. So that is our very quick overview of the plan. From that, I would like to mention that I've got Assistant Director James Grant here, Vice Chair of Parks Board Jason Wolf, and Chair Josh Pearson. Josh, real quick, if you got some comments you would like to share with the group, just to make sure I had your blessing.
Sure. I only wrote down about 16 points, so I'll go through those. No, really just wanted to take an opportunity just to commend Matt and James and Chief and all of those that are involved. It's amazing how much these guys do with what we have as we continue to grow. It would be easy to sit back a little bit or let some things get behind, but they just don't believe in that and they don't do that. And so opportunity came up for us to be proactive and really wanted to take advantage of that. These guys did a phenomenal job in gathering the data, presenting it to us and really making our job really easy. So kudos to them and to their team, and just really excited about this update. So
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the whole Parks Board, everyone involved. We really have come a long, long way in the last few years. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I'm done, Mayor. It's up to
Are you through?
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other comments from council?
No, I would just like to say as a graduate of Parks Board, I appreciate everything, especially you, Matt, now doing double duty, and James for stepping up. And it's exciting to see. I'm ready for Heritage Park to, I don't know, wake up and be done and have fun. But I guess I'll recommend that we adopt the strategic master plan update for City of Belton Parks and Rec Department.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the strategic parks update. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And again, Matt, we appreciate you wearing two hats and
Thank you very much.
might cut down the glare
Yeah,
a little
there you
there. Yeah. So, but we certainly, Josh and everyone involved with the Parks Board, we get so many positive comments about how far we've come with the parks and how well they're maintained. And Parks Board has been a very big part of that, so we appreciate it. There being no further business tonight, we are adjourned.